Hello and welcome to Take Time. I am your host Patrick Marlett, and today we're taking a look at another modern Mido Multifort offering. And today I have in the Mido Multifort Patrimony. This is of course the blue dial variant. There are two other offerings as well, one in anthracite gray as well as a black sunray finish. Much like Mido's other offerings, here we have a contemporary take on an older design, that being the Multifort datameter with the twisted lugs and overall look of this case. I absolutely love it. Now, before we begin the video, I'd like to state that this watch is only being lent in for review, and that's a darn shame, but thank you so much, Fernanda, and of course Mido, for having this product sent out to me for review. So how has the Mido Multifort been in day-to-day use? Well, as you all know, I like to start with the bad and then move on to the good before giving my final verdict on a review item. So without further ado, let's talk Patrimony. The Mido Multifort Patrimony measures 40 millimeters in diameter. It's roughly 47 millimeters from lug end to lug end. The case itself is only 11.95 millimeters thick and features 19 millimeter lug widths. The 50-meter water-resistant 316L stainless steel case is detailed in a variety of polished and satin-based finishes. Up top we have a boxed sapphire crystal, and just below that beautiful blue dial is a caliber 80. What is the Mido caliber 80, I hear you ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked. It's essentially a modified ETA that's been adjusted in 3 separate positions for accuracy, and it gets that 80 in the name because of the 80 hours of power reserve it boasts. If you are looking for something that you can jump back into later in your rotation during the week, well, that 80 hours of power reserve really does help. It's funny, I put this thing down, picked it back up after a day or two of not using it, and it was still accurate to where I had previously set it with enough reserve for me not to have to hand wind it, which isn't an issue, but really nice if you go through a lot of watches in your rotation. Now, the first bad note I want to mention is in regards to the lug width. Now, I know for a lot of people, 19 millimeters is going to be a deal breaker. I know it's a non-issue for some, but a lot of folks prefer that the watch be an even measurement. It's simply easier to find strap options for a watch that is in 20 or 18 or 22 millimeters in width. This being 19 is a little bit of a nuisance, but I will state that the cognac colored leather strap here is really nice. I mean, I had no thoughts of taking this off of this leather strap, so it's sort of a neutral point for me, but I do want to point that out again, that 19 millimeters is a bit inconvenient for most. Now, my next bad note in regards to the Patrimony here is price and styling. Now hear me out, that's a bit of an odd one, I know, because if you're looking this up right now, and there's a link in the description for you, but these start at $890. That is an amazing deal for a watch that looks this good and as detailed as finely as this is, the diamond cut hands, all of the good you get with this. What kills me is that for folks like me that don't need to keep track of pulse beats, the pulsometer is just an unnecessary decoration on the dial, and unfortunately they don't offer this at this price point without the pulsometer. You can buy a modern datameter. I believe they still have some of their limited edition datameters, but those are over $1,300. The base price of one of those units is over $1,300, so you're spending a couple hundred more to get the watch without the pulsometer on the dial. It's a little bit of a nuisance because I absolutely love everything else about this case in dial design, aside from the fact it has that pulsometer on the dial. And I generally prefer to avoid decorations that are unnecessary in my day-to-day use. That's why I avoid buying watches that feature compasses on them, because I just don't need that function daily. It's an unnecessary for me, much like the pulsometer here. And again, you can buy a vintage datameter, or you can buy one of their modern Multifort datameters, but you're going to have to spend a lot more, sadly. So if you like the look and scale of this watch, unfortunately there isn't a model within the Patrimony range that provides this same watch sans the pulsometer scale. And look, if you use it on a day-to-day basis, that's great for you. This is a fantastic watch that you should be buying if you wanted something that was a non-chrono that allowed you to count pulse beats. But anyways, aside from that, there is one more minor complaint. Now picture this, we live in a world where the Patrimony didn't feature the pulsometer. Well, if it didn't, then we'd be able to extend the lines of our dial details so that they reach the outer edges of that dial diameter. And guess what? We would have a 6 that didn't scrunch up against that date window. Now, to me, these two things are too close to one another. I would have really liked it if the 6 rested on the outer edge and wasn't squished up against a date frame. If we were able to stretch out the lines of these details to where that inner minute and hour track could have rested on the edge of that date frame and the 6 could neatly rest outside of it, much like the 12 is over here, it would have been really nice, but such is not the case. That's really it in regards to my bad notes concerning the Mido Patrimony. I really do like this new Multifort design. I just wish they would expand that range to include a model that had a dial sans that decoration. It can't just be me in regards to the pulsometer, but it's great that we have a watch provided with that vintage style and appeal in a modern package. So let's get into some of those good notes now. This case design is beautiful, and it's a shame to me that it's taken them this long to introduce a standard model range that uses this case, because this is arguably the best case they've put out for a dress watch ever. And I love that they're reaching into their back catalog and providing us a modern example of what a Multifort should be. And on that same note, you'll notice that the Mido logo is also old school. You can see that they're pulling from their heritage here, but that case itself is easily one of my favorite dress watch cases ever designed. I love that they're making it in a sub $1,000 package. It's just a great deal for folks that have been wanting to get this look, but not have to dig into their pockets and find a nice example of a vintage Mido Multifort. I absolutely love this case design. I don't own many dress watches, but this is one I've been wanting to own for some time. Not this per se, but you all don't know this. I've been searching for a good example of a Mido Multifort datometer for a long time. Of course, the case dimensions of that watch are very much different from this, but it's great knowing that you can get a modern package with that same styling, a better movement arguably, in a package that's under $1,000. It's a really awesome deal. Mido has always knocked it out of the park in regards to their case detailing and finishing, and the craftsmanship here is no different from other offerings I've taken in from the brand. This really is a finely executed piece, and again, starting at $890, that's a really smashing deal. Now, aside from the pulsometer scale, which I promise I'll stop talking about, the dial itself is really lovely. It's so easy to read with those syringe hands. That seconds hand really does disappear in the dial, except for in direct sunlight. It picks up light very, very well. And while we're talking about the dial, you'll notice it has more of a matted finish to it. It's somewhat similar to how Seiko does their modern sun ray finishes. It has a more matte appeal than a polished appeal. And what that provides, at least in direct sunlight, is a little bit more visibility. I found that shinier sun ray finished surfaces tend to bounce back too much light, despite any sort of anti-reflective coating. In some instances, I do prefer a matted finish, and the look here is preferable in my book. One of the last things I want to touch on in regards to good notes before we get in a wrist shot with this piece is the movement inside of it. It's phenomenal. You don't realize how beneficial it is to have a movement with a power reserve that goes far over 40 hours. I own a lot of watches, and I go through a wide rotation of pieces, of some of my own, obviously review units, and it's nice to know that I can put the watch down and come back to it and the time is still set. As fun as that ritual is, I love the fact that the power reserve here will last a couple of days for me to get back to it. Because right now, you don't know this, but I've got 5 watches in for review, and this one has kept up with all of them and has gone past them insofar as its reserve is concerned. So I love the caliber 80 that's used in Mido's lineup. I think it was a great inclusion for this watch. And of course, you know, it's made the dimensions great too. If you like a dress watch that's 40 millimeters and up, then you'll enjoy this. And that's one of the last good notes I want to touch on, the overall scale of this piece. And I've owned a Seiko Cocktail Time in the past, and I've owned a few dress watches that jumped over that 38 millimeter diameter mark. I don't generally aim to buy a dress watch that's over 38 millimeters. I just feel like they should wear smaller, but this case design wears smaller. And I think the overall scale of this piece is really favorable and should be favorable for most wrists. The short lug-to-lug distance. In the 19 millimeter lug width isn't a big issue for me. I actually have other leather straps that are 19 millimeters. I've owned a lot of vintage Seiko, and you'll learn if you collect vintage Seiko, you have to buy 19 millimeter straps. So that wasn't a big issue. But the case itself actually wears extremely well in my opinion. And why don't we go ahead and check out what this looks like on the wrist now. And here is what the Mido Multifort Patrimony will look like for all of your admirers on a 7¼ inch wrist. And I want to take a second to talk about this leather strap really quick. I didn't bring it up. The other Midos I've had in the past that I've experienced, their stock leather straps have left a lot to be desired. This one is really nice. I'm surprised that the most affordable product I've received from them has received the nicest leather strap, but this, in my opinion, is one of the better leather options I've received from them. And we'll get a closer look in just a second. And here's the Patrimony on my 7¼ inch wrist, and it's just, that leather option actually ties in really well with that blue dial. I love the contrast and those color tones, that, you know, light, bright cognac leather coloration and that deep blue of the dial. It's just a really lovely contrast. This is a great piece for like dress casual attire, or if you want to dress it up completely, you know, this would look really good on a polished leather strap. Anyways, I love this leather strap. The buckle itself is actually really nice too. It's thinner 316L stainless steel, but because of how thin it is, it actually rests really flush against the backing of this other strap, so it doesn't catch on to anything. I've had buckles that are just overly large, and I think for a dress watch, the thinner the buckle, the better. And it hasn't gone without, you know, some labeling. I would remark, at least this is a minor bad note, it'd be nice if they went with the same Mido font on the buckle as they do the dial here. That's one miss I noticed, but it's not a huge deal. But again, it would have been nice if they went for the same font choice. You can't see it now, but there's longhand writing for the Mido instead of the modernized logo. But at any rate, that is what the Multifort looks like on a 7¼ inch wrist. So who is the Multifort Patrimony for? Well, I guess nurses or doctors that are on a budget that can't afford that chronograph instead. There's that. Or just folks that enjoy a well-made dress watch. And I really do love that Multifort design. To me, this is the language of a Multifort case. I wish that more of their modern offerings, more of their modern Multifort offerings looked like this. They just don't. But it's nice to see that this has been added to the collection. And if you wanted a modern dress watch with this classic styling, that's who this is for. It's for someone like me. And that makes me really upset that I have to send this back. But I really enjoyed my time with this piece. Again, I cannot wait to see them expand upon this range. Of course, keep the price the same and give me an offering that features that date window, no pulsometer, different dial colors, different case options, and so far as materials are concerned. I would really love to see them expand upon this case, because to me, this is a quintessential Mido case. And I love that you can get it in a sub $1,000 package. Really, really great work, Mido. I'm a super fan of this new design. You know, I've been contemplating buying a Mido Multifort data meter, one of the limited edition ones. I just don't like the gold tone of the PVD coating. I have nothing against their coating. I think their coating is great, but I would have just preferred a stainless steel case that looked like steel instead, and that's just not offered. That's one of the things that stopped me from getting that. So, you know, the search goes on for me for that vintage model. But if they make a modern one like this, that's a data meter in steel, that's sub 1,000, I'll be hard pressed not to get one. I really do love the design. But at any rate, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button. It looks a whole heck of a lot like this dude. If you have friends, forums, groups that are interested in the patrimony, their inheritance, feel free to share this video with them so they can get another consumer's opinion on Mido's latest offering. Also, if you are new to the channel, well, guess what? I do videos like this monthly. So if you enjoy watch content, feel free to slam that subscribe button. While you're down there, you can hit the little bell icon just next to that to be alerted as to when my videos air. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, and thank you for the time.